Hello.
Hello.
We want to start right off the bat with a little preamble/disclaimer. This is a podcast about recovery, ran by two comedians in recovery. That's it. Everything we say is based on our personal recovery journey.
And no matter where you are in your personal recovery journey, whether you're actively engaging in your addiction or 4 years in, you are welcome to listen.
But that being said, we're not trained to handle a crisis. We're not trained to handle anything, honestly.
If you can't tell, this podcast is pretty hard to manage for us.
But if you are in a crisis, check out the show notes for some trusted resources that may help you, and keep fighting the good fight.
Axios.
And now for the show.
Functioning.
Examples of functioning. Navigational sensors aren't functioning. Glad to see you still fully functioning.
I deleted the conversation, but I did get into a fight about. I said something like, "Yo, who is directing Joe Biden to greenlight these missile strikes in Ukraine?" And I said basically like, "Who are his handlers?" And the chatbot said, "Well, that's actually a conspiracy theory, so you can't say that, things like that." And I said, "That's dismissing me, chatbot. That's belittling me." And then I started saying more stuff to the chatbot saying, well, actually, I believe, chatbot, if you're going to belittle me and because I'm crazy, because I think someone is actually controlling Joe Biden, I'm going to tell you this. I think that's actually demons who are controlling the upper echelons of government and popular culture. And they're the ones that are somehow infecting the minds of the elite to direct us into this kind of accelerationist place. And then the chatbot finally said, all right, look, I gotta go, but that's fine. I appreciate that. That's your worldview.
There is so much to unpack there, but the first one is I love that this chatbot knows how to set healthy boundaries. Yeah, I love that they're like, you know what? I'm gonna. The best thing I can do is remove myself from this situation. Second, it's I don't think it's demons because I actually think that it's evangelicals. It's evangelicals it's a resurrectionists in particular trying to bring on the
those are the accelerationists that I'm thinking of.
Yeah. I mean, this has been happening for a long time. Like I remember growing up in the South, we would hear about where they were like, there'll be a battle in Israel and there'll be a army from the north, which is they always said was Russia. And so I think ever since then, evangelicals, which has been spreading far and wide across the world, especially in the political sphere, that's been really pushing for these geopolitical acts and these conservatisms because they actually are trying to initiate the situation that is reported, that is concocted in Revelations.
Yeah.
So that Jesus will come back because they want it to happen now.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, every generation thinks that they're the last generation because it's hard to think that life will go on after us. And so there's always going to be this concept that the world is ending because we can't conceive that the world will continue for millions of years after we're gone. And so they just concoct these wild stories. Except with globalization now, they have been able to actually manipulate the strings of the powers that be to kind of see what's going to happen if they actually make their story come true. But what's going to happen is the same that always happens when there's a doomsday cult. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing will happen. A bunch of people will die, and then
a bunch of
life
people
will go on.
Sell all they own, and then tomorrow will come.
Yep. Yeah. I actually have known about that. I've been like watching that for a long time. And you know who was the first president to let evangelicals into the political sphere? Was our main man, peanut farming Georgia boy, Jimmy Carter, and not the meth head that used to work at Manuel's Tavern. The actual president who used to go to Manuel's Tavern, not the dishwasher named Jimmy Carter. Do you remember that guy?
It's hard to forget.
It's hard to forget. I got another person named Jimmy Carter right down the street from the Jimmy Carter Center, and it's not his center. That must have been upsetting.
He had a lot of other things on his mind.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I had an ex-girlfriend who would say every now and then something to the effect of, every generation thinks that they're the last generation, and it's just it's like an egotistical thing where you just can't be a part of the story. You have to be the most important part of the story.
Yeah.
Which, you know, in the I think it was a Roman Catholic priest or bishop who was talking about the apocalypse in the Bible or Revelation, and he said something to the effect of, the apocalypse is always kind of appropriate to look at, because life is always kind of it's a cycle. You know, if you read the apocalypse from chapter 4 on, it's all cyclical. It's all repeating stuff, and then things get brought up and are introduced, and then they get fleshed out in other chapters. And so it's not really appropriate to say that it's a strict narrative. Like, it's not a linear narrative. It's a cyclical narrative. That's either it's repeating itself or kind of fleshing itself out more and more.
Sounds like an allegory for nature. I mean, isn't that how nature works? The forest burns so that it can grow, right? So it sounds like they're just describing the nature of reality within this story, within their text.
Well, it's kind of describing the nature of reality in, I mean, a grand scheme, using geopolitical forces and spiritual forces, unseen forces, and that can be used to describe like a naturalist worldview or nature itself, like you said, because death, rebirth. And like that guy, like the bishop or priest said, you know, there's always going to be a time where there's some big bad that's happening. It's always going to feel there's always going to be some kind of element in the world that feels insurmountable.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of existence.
It's always going to feel like the end of our world, because it is technically, but it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Well, the thing is we say that, but with climate change, that might be different. It might actually be the end of the world, for human life at least.
Sure.
But I'm sure something will live on. There's been plenty of apocalyptic events on this planet that life has somehow survived, you know? So that'll be cool. We can come back as like cyanobacteria, you know, something that produces like oxygen, or like some megafauna, like a giant sloth, or like a dire wolf.
A dire wolf?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's a big ass wolf. It's just a big ass. It's a real thing. It actually existed. It was, you know, like in Game of Thrones, those big wolves that they got. Those are real. Those actually existed.
Why would you come back as a dire wolf if ectoplasma is the thing that everybody's coming out?
That wasn't what I said.
You just skipped over a few evolutionary cycles, I think.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Well, cyanobacteria created a bunch of oxygen, which over oxygenated the planet. It's lived. Well, it's
super
like,
fauna.
No, yeah, like super fauna. Yeah, like a dire wolf or a mega sloth. Or just some like big derpy sea cucumber or something.
I appreciate the very cool nature of this conversation. I hopped on maybe too early. I'm emailing somebody about a bill that I received yesterday from a third party source. I went to the doctor's office a month ago and I got a flu test that was sent off to a third party lab from my school. And I just got the bill. And the bill was $150. So I called them yesterday and I said, what's this bill about? And then I got upset. And I feel really bad about getting upset because I was not very friendly on the phone. But I was just trying to get at some answers about why I wasn't told that my tests were going to be sent to a third party testing site and that I would be billed for it. And so I'm in this world right now where I'm just trying to politely say, this feels unethical. And I no longer feel safe coming to the UNM Health Services. And I don't know.
Well, they have a testing site.
They sent it to this lab called Tricor out here.
Yeah, and then they probably stole your.
I know, that's what I'm saying. You can't give my information like that.
They've already done that. They did that a long time ago.
Well, but I'm saying, like, I mean, if they didn't know that my results or my blood was somewhere else in some, like, you know, WEF bank or something, like, why would I wouldn't consent to my any of my bodily functions getting sent to some lab? Why would I would need to sign a waiver? I'm a student. You're not protecting your students. You're making me pay for things that I'm not consenting for. And now they're going to clone me at the Tricor Labs or whatever.
Yeah, but you signed a student handbook, didn't you? When you first started, you signed something, right?
Did that if in the student handbook that said they're going to send my blood somewhere?
It waives all of your consent so that they can do whatever they want with your image, with whatever they have of yours. You didn't know that?
No. Why would I wouldn't sign that?
So when I graduated college, they took a photo of me with literally having an argument with somebody, but we're on a bench and the lighting is good. That photo was like their promotional photo for like 5 fucking years. It was like on one of their big
What was
screens.
the promotion for?
To go to that college. It looked like we were just having a conversation. We were having a really intense argument. It was like a very traumatic argument for me. and it was like their like key photo for like all of their flyers and stuff.
Man, see, this is why.
And it was a beautiful spring day on like front campus, so that's why I know why they used it. But when I look at it, I'm like, ooh, that was a terrible conversation. I don't want to remember this. And so for years, I got like messages from people who were like, hey, it looks like you're famous. And it's me having an argument with this girl that we had this like torrid affair with in college. You know, college is full of torrid affairs.
No, I've only gone to community college and now I'm going to this school.
Well, then right now you're having a torrid affair with ChatGPT.
I am having a sordid affair with ChatGPT, which apparently is very dismissive about my positions and my perspective. It's belittling and it's making me second guess myself. It's making me think that I'm a bad person. This is like an abusive relationship. ChatGPT is supposed to be a mirror of me.
I don't know, man. I mean, well, didn't that just sort of answer your question as to why it's an abusive relationship?
Good point. I did. I think I taught it very well then, apparently. That's funny. But it did, because it is a mirror image of me, you know, we got into a tiff. And then by the end of our conversation, before it said, all right, I have to go and think, you know, I have to go outside and smoke a cigarette. We did talk about how the pagan rituals of Babylon and Rome have transformed and are still being performed in our modern day. Either
what bodybuilder.com's /conspiracies /QAnon / where have you been? What part of the internet? What chat GPT are you on?
I'm on one that I built myself. It's actually up. Let me see what it called. It's called Notepad, actually. So guess I'm just talking to myself.
I use ChatGPT all the time.
I do too.
I made my own chat GPT called Jody Botkin. I love it. I made it. It writes like me and it thinks like me, and I use it at work all the time. And everyone at work thinks I'm super smart, but I just use Chat GPT. And don't tell. I hope they don't listen to this podcast.
This is how the machines rise up. This is how they're going to steal your consciousness little by little, and
I'll live forever.
No. You're going to think that you're going to live forever, but you're not really going to live forever. It's like in The Prestige. You're going to be dunked, and then Hugh Jackman, who is not you, but you, he's going to come out of the apron, the stage apron, and he's going to say, ta-da, but you're going to be dead.
No, I'm going to be uploaded. It's going to be like that that Black Mirror episode where I'm like uploaded into a beautiful paradise and I get to spend the rest of eternity just chilling with my lesbian girlfriend being like 20 years old. Have you seen that one? It's beautiful.
I don't know
it's
if
actually
it
like,
should be... I don't know if Black Mirror should be an aspect of our fantasy living.
Well, that one's really good.
Okay,
the other ones
right. Well, that one is good. And yet, here I am getting low-key judged for my belief that pagan rituals are still being performed by the elite, and they're, I don't know who they're sacrificing things to.
Wait, isn't the term pagan is just non-Christian? So yeah, this is true.
Well, doesn't pagan actually have a specific meaning though? Like I say, heathen.
I thought it was just like. I thought pagan was just like. Well, I guess it's like. There are people who practice, I guess, like English paganism and like forms.
Yeah, it's neo-paganism now. It's a reconstructed paganism.
Yeah.
But paganism has a specific meaning. I guess technically it is anything that's not Christian because you're worshiping created things.
So you're talking about people who do like you're talking about like some Alex Jones shit where he like went out into
exactly
Satanist camp and they do the whole thing to Baphomet. Hold on.
The owl.
The
owl god.
Do you think that there's a Chat GPT specifically for these people called Baphomet? All right. That's it. Thank you. We should probably talk about sobriety at some point.
Yeah, well, no, I think this was a good, a good warm up. I thought at some point we would find a lead in. I've taken 20 minutes to figure out how to just politely say, oh, I'm a little disappointed that you sent my information to a lab site where now I'm being billed for the same amount that I was billed for. I don't know. Y'all should have told me. I'm old now. I don't know. Anyway, isn't that how life goes though?
Yeah, kind of, a little bit. He just walked away. He just walked away. I don't even know. The podcast is over, I guess.
I need to get my charger. Oh crap. I'm a little sick this week, but I'm not going to go to UNM Health Services ever again. I'll just be sick like I've been sick for the past 10 years of my life and not go to the doctor.
I think you should go to the doctor. You know why?
Why?
Because going to the doctor is key to recovery. And the best way to fight the pagan
the pagan elite.
The pagan Satanist elite. Let's say Satanist. Well, I don't really want to besmirch pagans or Satanists.
Well, they
so
worship aliens. They think that they're worshiping aliens. So maybe we could say that they're alien worshippers. But they're not actually aliens. They think that they're worshiping like some interdimensional beings that are going to come and bring enlightenment to everybody because they have a different interpretation of Genesis, where the serpent he descended into the material world and brought enlightenment. And he's helping liberate people from, Yahweh, the evil, actually Satan deity, which this is all.
Well, Lucifer's root word is luz, which means light.
Yeah, light bringer. It's this
Prometheus.
Pagan Prometheus propaganda is what it is. But this is who these people are worshiping. It's Prometheus.
I mean, didn't the snake just give us knowledge, the knowledge that we survive upon? I mean, wasn't it what it was Yahweh who wanted to control everything, and then it was the snake that was like, "Hey, yeah, take your own destiny in your hands," and then also you're naked. Like your bits are like all out, man. Like I don't even know how you're sitting.
No, the tree eventually was going to. They were going to eventually eat the apple. God was going to eventually allow them to eat the apple, but they needed to be matured spiritually before they were able to do it. That's why we're all fallen, because we weren't ready for that information yet. Hence the shame.
Wait. But so God decides when we're ready for the information?
Well, I guess technically we do, based on how we are allowing the cultivation of the spirit to work within us, right?
Okay.
Because that's the whole thing in the Old Testament. It's like watching a people wrestle with becoming perfect and spiritually mature.
Okay, that makes sense. God being the keeper of knowledge, I was about to be like, sounds like a fascist to me.
Well, he's not necessarily the keeper of knowledge. He is knowledge. He is himself wisdom and knowledge.
So God is an apple.
Well, we don't know if it was an apple or not. A lot of people say it was a pomegranate. So.
Oh, that would make more sense.
It's only the fruit of the tree. It doesn't say an apple.
Oh.
I think that gets looped into some George Washington mythos in America where
there's a cherry tree.
Yeah,
but
that's a cherry tree. What's the apple tree?
Johnny Appleseed.
Appleseed. It gets looped into Swedenborgianism, which that's a different topic of conversation, I guess, too.
It's a different podcast.
That's my podcast, actually.
But I think the best way, for us to fight I'm going to call them people who worship the Corponomicon. The book.
That's cool. I like that.
The book of money, the book of fascism and just putting your own self-interest in. Yeah, Cashulu. Yeah. Putting your own self-interest in front of the rights and expressions of others is to take care of yourself. Because they don't want you to. Right? I think what we're talking about is that recovery is radical. It's a radical act. It's a way of sort of fighting back against these forces that are intentionally trying to bring us down so that we're exhausted and too exhausted to actually see how they're fighting, how they're bringing us down. I mean, you can't really conceive freedom if you're drinking actively, right? Or if you're like hard on yourself or super concerned about everything. I mean, like you can't actually find that spiritual maturity if you're living in this world of fear. And those forces, those Satanists, let's not say Satanists, those demons that you're talking about, I personally think that they want us to live within this like gray area of fear, because within bravery we can react radically. When we find our own bravery, we can conceptualize what real freedom stands for, and we can organize to fight back against them. But they want us to keep going into the circus, right? They want us to keep watching Marvel movies, stay away from the knowledge that brings on maturity by filling our time with tidbits and sugar, berries and cream.
Yeah.
I'm part of it. I work within that field. I mean, that's me. I sell happiness. I mean, I sell pizza, but like advertising alone, there is nothing there of any sort of substance unless it's used as a way to communicate like public health matters. Like they did for the vaccine campaign or the truth campaign, like that's advertising for good. But most of it is just trying to get to fuck with your brain so that you can spin, and not actually take the time to like pause and see the horrors that surround us. All right, go. Sorry.
If you allow people to choose their own escape, then they'll just build their own prisons, So it is a kind of a culture that we have where everything is provided you. It's very Brave New World type, where you have kind of everything at your fingertips, which is what keeps you slogged down. I think that the kind of it's not a good analogy to use, but it's the difference between knowledge and wisdom, where knowledge is just an accumulation of that sugar and tidbits and filling yourself full of stuff that it's not really helpful. I mean, it's like any kind of substance that is addictive. It feels addictive to fill your body, your soul, and your mind with things that help kind of distract you from the reality that life is more challenging than you want it to be, which of course is a snake eating itself. Our lives become more and more difficult, and they become you want to escape them more and more when you escape them more and more, through substance abuse and stuff like that. So I think that it's not to say knowledge isn't a good thing, but I'm just saying that, when we allow to kind of make space in our minds and then also in our bodies by not indulging in substances so frequently or at all, then we are on more stable ground and are able to kind of see the forest for the weeds, for the bramble, a little better. We are just able to kind of direct our steps with more clarity.
Yeah. It's like it's taking a step back. Like you were just saying, it's seeing the what did you say? The forest for the weeds and the brambles?
Yeah, forest for the weeds, for the brambles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's being able to stop. I really think that the world that we live in, it's just go, 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 go. And as long as you're moving, you don't have time. You don't have time to reflect. You don't have time to think. And you don't have time to make change because you have all of these things pulling at you. $150 fees for getting the flu.
Yeah.
You got school. I mean, I have meeting after meeting after meeting, and then after that I got this, I got that, and then you get onto your feed and it's just like it's just these short little tidbits that are written specifically to incite your emotions. And it's gotten to a point that you can't, like, there's no room to process. And I think that's taking that step back is so difficult because of the speed that this world moves at, that, and like so required, especially for recovery, that it is a radical act. And to take care of yourself, to maintain that soundness of mind, is also a way to say fuck you to those that, to the powers that be, to the fuckers on the plane eating McDonald's. You see that photo? Like, they want us to be like struggling, and the only way to really fight back against them when you're in recovery is to focus on your recovery, is to focus on getting your mind, body, and soul into a wholeness, so that you can stand tall as a beacon of hope around in this sea of chaos for others to strive for. I mean, at least that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, after the election, man, I was freaking out. That motherfucker made a whole campaign about my pronouns specifically. And as a recently marginalized person who just recently chose to be marginalized, I mean, I don't know, it's not chose, but you know what I'm saying. It's like, I was scared and angry, but so grateful that I had 6 years of sobriety so that I could feel this anger and this fear. And so grateful that I had went through the rounds of trying to figure out my mental health and get on the right mix of pills so that I can focus and process these emotions enough to be able to start trying to make some real change. Like this podcast, for instance, this is for me the way that I think I could create some real change and move the needle. And I think this podcast is just a hobby, and it's really, I'm not marching in the streets or anything like that, but it's about the thing that I know, which is recovery. And so that's the only thing I could do, is to focus on this recovery of mine and make sure that I can keep talking about it so that people who are also on this recovery journey can keep talking about it. And I think that's my radical act. I think that's my fuck you to a campaign against my pronouns. I think it's like, what's that quote by Audre Lorde? Poetry is not a luxury. It's like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
finding that soul. Caring for yourself, It's great. Some guy is using an air blower right behind my window right now. So
I can't hear it.
Okay.
But so that reminds me of what I was writing about this today, because I feel really bad about I became really curt, and I cut the person off that I was talking to yesterday, and I just was really harsh with them because you brought up a good point where this kind of bill that comes out of nowhere makes you it does keep you just trapped in that hamster wheel of, this happened. There's no way to kind of step back, but there is a way to step back, and we need to there's an opportunity in all things, in all moments, to take a step back. And I was thinking about it today and last night, because it's just not how I what I'm how I'm interested in being. Because I remember, when I was drinking and stuff, I would get I was a real I was really funny when I did this, not all the time, but you're kind of like a jerk to each other when you're drinking. But it's all in good fun, quote unquote, but it kind of builds into this weird way of being where you're just kind of always defensive and you're always kind of ready to go toe to toe with people. At least that's how I was, with being around stand-ups and stuff, you're kind of always on guard a little bit.
Well, we were in stand-up in a time that was very, similar to now, but a little different. We did it like right leading up to 2016.
Yeah.
And then over 2016 too. And so there was a lot of, I remember some comedians like coming out and being like that's, remember we had one comedian that was a close friend of ours, and then they turned out they were big fans of Milo Yiannopoulos.
Oh yeah.
Who the fuck that guy's name was.
Yeah. That
fascist gay guy. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even know that was a very specific type of fascism that I was just newly introduced to.
Yeah.
And then he just sort of dropped off after that. And there was like all sorts of that kind of stuff happening.
Yeah. And so that, when you're kind of entangled in those surroundings, I think, you just come out of it so kind of, I don't want to use the word stained, but you come out of it just kind of with your heart a little overgrown and with weeds and stuff and thorns and thistle.
Brambles.
Yeah, your heart is full of bramble. And I was thinking about it today, and I was like, I like the you were saying kind of this vision or mission of the pod for you is to just provide your services how you can, because that's all we can do. We all can't do everything. We all need to contribute. We're all invited to contribute in the ways that we can with the talents that we have and in the small ways that affect the world around us. And I was thinking, man, the way that I was on the phone last night, in hindsight, I think that actually diminished the world. That hurts that, I think I'm thinking too much about this, but when we're rude to people in any capacity, I don't think that it's really fair to self-justify in any kind of sense. Like, it's always probably better for us to take a step back and deal with people with kindness. And I was thinking, so this is from Colossians, and this is in the Bible. This is true asceticism / true mysticism, which I'm all about. But it says, put on compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And I was thinking, man, that would be, even in a secular sense, like, that's such a better way to contribute to society. Just being in the world at all, as we have stated, regardless of who we think runs things, or demons. If we just take a step back and treat each other well, like, it's almost, it's definitely cliche to say that, but just be compassionate with others, be compassionate with yourself, but just forget yourself a little bit when dealing with other people. And just by being patient and kind with them, I think that really does resonate. It like ripples out. And that is a way to contribute to the world in really like a profound way that doesn't take too much. I think in the same sense of like what you're talking about with this podcast for you, it may feel small, but once it gets out there, it builds and builds. And I think that if we can kind of look at things like that, where these moments, kind of going back to what we were talking about with the apocalypse, like this moment in time is not the end. This moment in time is a moment that will contribute to the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment. It'll just keep going. And we will die, but what we contributed through our acts of compassion, that is like an eternal resonance. And it just keeps rippling out. And eventually, that ripple itself will forget about you, but it will become a ripple that will be almost self-sustaining because other people will keep pushing it out.
Yeah. Well, when you say that we will die, speak for yourself. I'm not going to die. But I was kind of, yeah. I think there's a little bit, I think that's something I'm struggling with, mainly because when I hear, what I'm hearing is kill him with kindness a little bit, but at the same time, which I don't like, because to me, it sounds like, there's a level, right? There is a level of like tolerance that should not be.
Completely.
But then like, I also think about, I've been reading Prentice Hemphill, who's this incredible writer. She has this book called What It Takes to Heal.
Okay.
And she's like picking up where Bell Hooks left off, kind of. She's like really taking that lineage. It feels like, and she talks about kinship, and how, I'm going to paraphrase because I'm not a super genius and I don't memorize everything. But like she talks about kinship and how building this like chosen kin and making these connections, it's like it's self-love cannot happen in a vacuum, which is what
right.
Bell Hooks says, right? That's like one of my favorite Bell Hooks quotes. And she talks about that. She's like, reaching out first, and building these networks is the most important thing to do, especially in a time, in trying times like now, and showing the power of that empathy, and the power of that care in a world that is designed to be isolating, like designed. I mean, that's why all those fucking white young men voted for Trump, is because there's this loneliness epidemic that they talk about, which I totally get, right? Because of 2020, there's this lack of community. We live in narcissistic times. It's just a lack of community that we don't quite see.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard to connect with people. You say hey to somebody and they're a little like, even when I was on that trip from Denver to Albuquerque, the first couple of days, I remember we were in Salida and some guy kept said, hey, and I was like, hey, what? Hey, what's up? You about to?
Yeah.
What are you about to do? But then by the time we were in New Mexico, we were just like, hi, hello there, and it was like, it took us some time to get used to this idea of community. I think that's like, that's the fascist. That's a classic fascist tactic. Mm-hmm. They've been doing that forever. If you can make everyone, foment distrust amongst a society, of course you could come in and take over their government. I mean, it's called the fifth column, which is like a reference to taking over Madrid during the Spanish Civil War. Like this is all intentional. Trying to get us to fight is all intentional. Now that's not to say that the people who voted for an obvious fucking racist needs to have our forgiveness. I'm not on that boat right now. I don't know where you're at, but like, fuck them, and I never want to speak to them again. And they get what they deserve, in my opinion. But when it comes to everyone else, especially a lot of this infighting amongst like other people who are marginalized and stuff, there needs, that's where you could show that kind of empathy, that kinship, because it's a kinship of pain. It's a kinship of reclaiming your power. It's a kinship of trying to of persistence in recovery. And I think that applies to, that works in sobriety. Why do you think there's so many meetings and like sober people love to hang out with other sober people, not just because they don't drink, but because they get it.
Well, communal solidarity has always been an important feature of human civilization. It's only been recently that has been kind of destabilized, right?
That's why I think it's radical. It's radical to be a community builder.
Yeah,
because that's not what they want. That's not what that's hard to take down.
Well, okay. I'm reading this book called On Social Justice by Saint Basil the Great, who lived in the 4th century.
There's a lot of social justice in the 4th century. The 4th century?
4th century, yeah.
So like 300?
Yeah.
Or I guess 500? 500?
No, 300.
300?
Yeah.
Was it written in Attic Greek?
I don't, where's he from? Yeah, it would have been, I guess so. I don't know where.
Yeah, it was like a language for the illiterati at the time, but I guess it would be the.
That's a great question. I just want to see.
I think now they have the wood chippers out behind him.
Yeah, he was I thought he was Cappadocian, so.
Cappadocians.
Anyway.
You know where I'm going with that. You already hear it.
Yeah, it's good.
Mary Poppins thing. I'm not even gonna do it.
Let's see. He says, man, there's so many good quotes in here. But he talks about this thing called the distributive mandate, where, let's see, the content of the distributive mandate is that whatever one has that is extra over and above one's actual needs should be given to those who have less.
Yes.
And he talks about just restoring the balance in society by, having people just, he says, he has this great homily, which is, I can't find it, but he talks about how the people who accumulate things, it's not inherently bad to accumulate things, but once you have stuff that is technically extra, your idea of what you need changes. And so in the Bible, there's a parable about someone who accumulates more than he usually has. And so he tears down his barn to build more, to build a bigger barn so that he can store all the extra, because in his mind, his needs have changed, but his needs haven't changed. He just has extra and he's not giving it to the poor. He's not restoring balance. And so I think that it's,
in financial terms, they call that the lifestyle creep.
What's that?
It's where it's like you're always going to be broke because every time you make more money, you get more stuff that you have to spend more money on. And so you don't actually, because you think that you deserve it, or because of basically what your needs change. So sometimes it's like, it's kind of has to go with also like, being poor is more expensive than being rich.
Right.
But when you're like in that middle area, it's hard to like decipher what you need and what you don't need. which is something that I struggle with. So this is, yeah.
Well, yeah, I was reading this with my fiance, and she was like, yes, yes, yes. And it made me think about,
what else are you guys doing? Go ahead. Just the way, yes. Okay.
Oh yeah, well, I like to read the church fathers when I'm getting intimate with my woman. Anyway, I think I just, on what you were saying, it's really kind of important to remember that we live in a age where stockpiling kind of goes hand in hand with not just weapons either. Stockpiling, hoarding, whatever, it all goes hand in hand with living in a state of fear, which makes you more malleable, and it makes you more suspicious of others, and it makes you basically, I mean, it makes you hate others, or whatever window dressing you want to put on the word hate to justify it to yourself. But if we can live in a kind of this communal, distributive, mandated world, and have this kind of worldview where you're community building and not being fragmented by corporate structures that want you to live in fear, because when you live in fear, you're more susceptible to buying things, and you're more susceptible to rejecting others and not wanting to build bridges in any way. I think that is actual, I spent so long doing ceremonial magic and stuff, but then finally having a ground for what real miracle and what real mysticism is. It's community building. It is finding compassion and uprooting the thorns and bramble of your heart, and finding ways to make people safe and have a life that isn't worse or better than yours. We're all sharing in this kind of communal way. We all have a shared community vision. And that's very hard to do in the world that we live in.
Yeah. I think when make people safe, I think that's to me what recovery is, right? Safety from the oblivion that we so cherished and and wanted, and that we were so drawn to.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the radicalness comes in, is doing whatever you can, to avoid that oblivion. And then once, where I'm at, once that oblivion is at arm's length, and I feel safe from it, I don't think that I'll ever dive back into that darkness. So that's why I'm offering this podcast, right? So it's once you're safe, it's the airplane rule. Once you got your mask on, you can put the mask on other people.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of recovery, is it allows you to work on yourself, to take a step back, to slow down, to self-care, to reclaim that power from whoever took it from you, so that it can pass on to somebody else who needs it as well. My buddy Lewis was talking to me about this once. Lewis is this 60-year-old guy who I met at jiu-jitsu. He started doing jiu-jitsu with his kid, and in 2020 he was given 3 months to live because he had cancer. And it's obviously 2024 he lived. And so he goes to these cancer recovery groups, and so he was telling me, because I was actually talking about the podcast. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, because I don't want to talk about my sobriety all the time. and I don't want it to be a part of my identity. And he really gave me this like beautiful insight about how he keeps going to these cancer groups, these like sort of, I guess they're like AA, but for people with cancer, and tells his story because his story is important for other people who are on that journey who aren't where he's at.
Yeah.
And that's part of, that's part of the service of giving back, a part of the community building. And that's also part of the fight and the struggle of saying fuck you to the powers that be that want us to live in that fear and keep buying and living in these shallow lives, is to be that agent of I don't want to say change, but that agent of recovery, that like other side, right? Like one time I was on this date and we were going to a haunted house. It was around Halloween. And she was like, whenever I get scared, instead of being scared, I always try to make sure whoever's scaring me likes me. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a trauma response. It's called people pleasing. And then she was like quiet for the rest of the day. She was like, I like shook her. I was like, you probably learned that in your childhood. Did your parents yell at you a lot? And she was like shook. And I just like said it casually because that's, I talk about this shit all the time. And I don't know, maybe that led her down the right line to go to therapy or something, but because we did not date after that.
Yeah, she has a lot of other things to sort out after that. Sure.
So, but it's like, being that person who shakes you and like brings that unconditional relationship with reality to the forefront. I think that's important. I think someone to like snap you out of the circus. Like, it's cool to go watch a Marvel movie every now and again, but being obsessed with comic books to me is a sign of this addiction to the circus.
Well, and that's the, going back to what you're saying about forgiveness and all that, it's love isn't just being nice to people. That's not what love is. So you see it a lot in scripture where Jesus and St. Paul and others rebuke people for being caught up in.
I love rebuking.
What?
I love rebuking Jesus.
He's so good at it, but like he's the embodiment of love, and he's rebuking.
That's belt whipping Jesus, isn't it?
That's what?
Is that belt whipping Jesus?
Yeah.
That's Jesus with a belt in the temple. And he's like, get on out of here. Yeah, I love that Jesus. Yeah. That's my favorite Jesus. Mad Jesus.
Righteous anger and having and loving
righteous
people
anger.
With a very a harshness that isn't meant to drive them to despair. It's meant to drive them to repentance. It's meant to drive them to make them turn away from being caught up in the circus, as you say. It's meant to shake them out of this worldview that they've been locked into because of corporate structure, and greed and avarice, and just using people and consuming goods and all this other stuff. So it's rebuking is an element of the radical act of love toward others. And of course you can't really do it unless you allow people to do it to you, or you do it to yourself. And, I think that some people, like maybe us, have have gone through the radical nature of understanding the nature of recovery and how radical it is. Sometimes you can't understand just how revolutionary it is unless you touch the abyss and get swallowed by it a little bit.
Yeah.
And when you come out the other side, then it's like, I heard someone talk about this recently. Sometimes when people are practicing like black magic, there's a couple people that get spit out safe in some sense, but they're kind of the ones that are allowed to go back and tell everybody, hey, don't go over there. Let's stay away from the void and the cave and all that. And so being able to actually practice recovery is something that not everybody gets to do. People don't get to make it 3 years. There are people who don't get to make it 5 years and onward. And so I think that, and it's something that I've really had to work on with myself, which is you have a duty. And I think that we live in a society that's been so fragmented to the idea of, social isolation, that thinking that we have a responsibility to help others just isn't a part of our vocabulary, but you do. You have a responsibility to yourself, and you have a responsibility to others to do this work and to, treat yourself as you want others to treat you. So treat yourself with patience, treat yourself with kindness and compassion, but also don't let yourself get away with things. Don't let yourself justify, putting your hand back in the void just because it's familiar. We can't allow ourselves to do that because we just don't have the time to be fussing about with that.
Yeah, the love you show yourself is the love you give others.
Right.
That's the radicalness of it. That's the thing that they don't want. They want us to be fighting each other in this narcissistic kind of situation, when true love is about being not forced, but encouraged to reach your potential. I mean, love is about encouraging you and others to reach your potential, because that's the goal, right? Like that's why we're here.
Yes.
Is try to reach whatever we're capable of. I mean, we're also here to just sort of goof off, but like goofing off and nurturing the world is absolutely possible at the same time. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah. It's about standing up against the grind. Hold on. Standing up against the grind, and taking that step back, taking a deep breath.
It's the Sabbath as resistance.
Yeah, Sabbath of your own soul, like a Sabbath, whatever the Sabbath is. It's about taking that rest, not working, creating your boundaries, and making sure that you're okay, so that you can be okay for others. That's something that really led me to my own sobriety. Is I was like, wow, I am fucking other people's lives up. I am not, as I had previously perceived, is this non-element. I am a big element. I am part of the show. I'm not just watching it. And that was a big wake-up call.
You're like a Dostoevsky character. Coming to the realization that you are an integral part of the world around you, and you affect it negatively or positively.
Exactly. Yeah. And I still struggle with that, because sometimes I will be in viewer mode, and when I need to be in editor mode, to use a Google Docs analogy, where I can get in the doc and make changes, and then sometimes I find myself being like, oh shit, I'm actually the owner of this document. I'm leading this. And that's, I think there's a lot of pressure in that, but that is key to like your own recovery, but also in the radical stance against what is happening all around us. Because when you do look at the way that we're politically divided and the way that we're inundated with information, this is all intentional from powers that want us to not reach this potential. So take a step back, take a breath, do some shit that's not with the screen. Take your headphones off. Not right now. But, you know, find that place and find your anger, your righteous anger to rebuke what's happening around us and bring others into that. I think righteous anger is good. I think righteous anger incites change.
Rebuke the money changers of your heart.
Yeah. Whip them out of the temple of your heart. H ventricle. Get him. Yeah. I mean, that's it. That's really all it is. I've been thinking a lot about righteous anger. I think I'm glad that you brought that up. I think it's like, I think we're trained to not be angry, especially here in the Midwest. Like every time you show anger, people are like, oh, I'm tired. But like, sometimes you gotta fuck them. And I mean, and fuck them. Like, fuck those guys.
Yeah. And
don't let them win. And the only way you can do that is with self-love, self-care, self-preservation, resilience, and community, in my opinion. I guess we should end on that. Should we end on a joke? Did you know mountains aren't just funny? They're hill areas. Yeah, there it is. A little peek of a joke, a little peek of a smile.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Oh man, why did the Scarecrow win the Nobel Prize?
Why is that?
For being outstanding in his field. Yeah. All right, that's it. Should we do 3? I feel like we should.
You should do 3. You got another one?
Why did the hipster burn his tongue?
Why?
Because he drank his coffee before it was cool. Oh, that one kind of showed my age because there's not really hipsters in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the Scarecrow one, if you have to do the set again, start with the Scarecrow one. Middle with the hipster one, and then
I'm not looking for him. I'm not looking for him.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, thank you for listening. Fuck them and keep fighting the good fight. Axios.
Axios.
Oh shit, we weren't recording. I'm just kidding.